goes. At the time of the recording of this podcast, and according to the ADP Awards website, Bitcoin and its DeFi ecosystem are bracing themselves for yet another crash. Oh my gosh. Analyzing most of the signals behind the Bitcoin price, that price is said to be made of three main components. And thousands of auxiliary components that are extremely granular to analyze and extremely granular in their makeup as well. Which is only fair, come to think of it, for an asset like Bitcoin with a global deployments from day one of its inception by Satoshi Nakamoto. Sam, as per the protocole, of course. Today, the Bitcoin price was exactly $21,278, down from $28,926 as per the last podcast. As they say in the space, players gonna play, haters gonna hate, we guess. Here we go again. Satoshi's Corner, Season 2, Episode 3.
My name is Satoshi.
Because cryptocurrency was designed by Satoshi.
My name is Satoshi, social media, blockchain, and big data consultant.
The political motive is to bring the power back to the people who use currency as a means of payment.
This podcast is a bite-sized summary of a potential conversation.
To communicate to each other, and there's no doubt in my mind.
Physical assets will also be recorded on the blockchain as tokens as well, so...
Of a potential conversation with Satoshi Nakamoto seminal white paper, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. The goal of this podcast is to establish the many sources and resources.
The tokenization of culture is exactly right. It's the only thing I've been thinking about the whole time, and it's going to be a big fucking deal.
The goal of this podcast is to establish the many sources and resources necessary to create, deploy, and optimize blockchain technology ecosystem in order to establish a Bitcoin or blockchain standard for businesses and organizations in the 21st century.
Right. Sit down, be humble. Okay, sit down, be humble. Sit down. All right, okay. So let's start. All right, so welcome to today's podcast. All right, welcome to today's podcast. I'm your host, Herman Jumesi, MA. Stay tuned to your RSS feed, whether it is on Spreaker, Podbean, Deezer, YouTube, or our current newsletter, ADMP Incubator on Substack. We also have a Discord, of course, the Discord, ADMP on Discord, hashtag MetaBaron. Okay, you will have all the links available in the description of this podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and listen to this podcast going forwards. Thank you again for your resilience, courage, and indefatigability, for sure. By the day. Okay, so let's get started. We are... Yeah, thank you. Alright. Okay, let's go. So, the program of today is Satoshi's Corner, Season 2, Episode 3, will be definitely lit beyond the lights, I'm telling you. First, SHA-256. The Satoshi's white paper, reading as per the protocol, of course. Then, second, we'll go into SHA-256. It will see us delve down the rabbit hole of proof of community as we start, I think last week, start talking about it. But we also, if you listen to this podcast and go back to Season 1, Episode 11, we also kind of start talking about it. So, proof of community and proof of culture in social tokens and online community tokens. We're looking at the social media digital inception as applied to crypto community, if you want. Okay. Then we will finish with the SEARCHCAST, of course, which is a sentiment analysis of its impact on the crypto space by cutting-edge crypto blogs reading too. So once we look at the concepts, if you want, that we've read on the Satoshi white paper, the readcast. Then we'll do the SEARCHCAST, because some terms, sometimes we don't understand some terms, or we want to clarify, if you want, the meaning of some of the term we are going to use throughout this podcast. Going back to Bitcoin signal price, which is a measure of the entire crypto ecosystem. It's also a measure, or a decentralized measure, should we say, of time in itself, of digital time. Time in the metaverse, if you want. That's the clock, if you want, metaverse clock. And also, it's also a measure of the metaverse of Web3, right? It's the clock of the Web3, the clock of the metaverse. That's what the Bitcoin price signal is, okay? Because, as we know, every 8 to 10 minutes, we have a new block that is being created. And that has happened since the 3rd of January 2009. So that is why we consider, if you want, the Bitcoin price signal as a metaverse clock. But it's also a measure of its resilience against the multiple attacks it keeps getting the subject of. What do I mean by that? Well, the price is made of 3 main components and thousands of auxiliary components, as we said earlier, and they're extremely granular, of course. And if you watch or read such a website by luminaries like our friends at Investopedia, for example, what do they say? When you ask Investopedia what actually determines the price of Bitcoin, Investopedia will tell you that the price of Bitcoin is primarily affected by its supply, the market's demand for it, of course, availability of those coins, which brings, of course, into play the crypto exchange by definition, because we're talking about availability, or the miners, or the hodlers. That's specific to the Bitcoin movement, by the way. Competing cryptocurrencies, of course, and investor sentiment. Okay? So a lot of Bitcoin maximalists actually think and believe, what rightly so or not at this stage, that a lot of what is known as the shitcoin market or the altcoin market is actually a distraction from the prime market, which would be the Bitcoin market. And Bitcoin would have been way bigger if it wasn't for the altcoin. It's a theory. It's an interesting theory. It has to be proven. You need research on that, and we need academic research on that. I will challenge anyone listening to this podcast to start that academic research, and mostly to focus your study on observing the Bitcoin phenomenon or the blockchain phenomenon from a global perspective. Please get out of your own country if you want to observe and draw a conclusion about Bitcoin or the Bitcoin ecosystem. The problem is, whenever you listen to podcasts, which are great podcasts all over the internet, all over the metaverse, I can't deny that. Nobody can deny that. Some of the greatest podcasts ever made have been made by crypto people and Bitcoin people. Dare I say they're the best podcast ever, to put it simply. Whenever you're talking about evangelizing about a new technology, we haven't seen that level of creativity anywhere else. However, we have to understand also that whenever people talk about or try to evangelize about the crypto ecosystem, they often make that deep mistake of simply looking at the crypto ecosystem as far as their country is concerned, or maybe even the continent sometimes, but mostly their country, right? So American crypto blogger will talk about America, Chinese about China, Japanese about Japan, French about French, Africans about Africa. It's really annoying to see as much ignorance, especially knowing that you're dealing with a global asset. It doesn't make any sense to actually look at it from a local perspective. You're missing the bigger picture. End of story. All right? So there is a finite number of Bitcoin, and the final coins are projected to be mined in 2040. Again, all of this is according to Investopedia. What we can say after a good reading of all those different opinions, because basically, like I said, no one is actually able to give you a global opinion, because nobody looks at the Bitcoin phenomenon from a global perspective. Nobody, very few people anyway, who do that. And don't tell me that, there was this Cambridge study about it. They do study English, they speak to an English-speaking audience, and they talk mostly about an English-based phenomenon. What about what's happening in language they don't understand? You will see usually it's a blind side on the approach, even if it's very rigorous academically. But it is often a blind side. And I can see it, because I've been being able to navigate different culture and different language. I can see those blind sides. And they're glaring to some extent. Yeah, it's a glaring blind side, if there is such a thing. All right, so the Bitcoin pricing that is made. Number one, should we say, let's say if you take the Bitcoin price when it was around 60K $60,000 to $40,000. Okay, so which is probably one of the its highest peak. So number one, that layer, if you want, it's speculative layer. Okay, it's traders, it's whales, it's cantillionaires. Okay, who have been able to game the system, so to speak, and manage through more or less, I would say, ethical trading to become rich, and so be it, right? Or to do those high frequency trading bots, and that's where all those bots kind of operate. It's definitely in that speculative layer. That would be the top layer, of course. Would say it goes from 60 to 40. All right, then you have the number two layers. That would be the middle operator layer or platform layers. Okay, platform like crypto exchange, a la Binance, Coinbase, CoinHouse. Okay, which tend to provide access to liquidity, which is good, fiat or crypto liquidity, by the way, and other crypto assets, usually beyond Bitcoin. Okay, which is a competition for Bitcoin. You understand that? Okay, that makes sense. But they will also provide you access to tools, apps, Lightning Network. And so we're going to call that layer the service layer, basically, right? The platform layer or the service layer. It will influence the price variation, of course. And it's probably going, and the price variation will be between 40K and 20K, let's say, all right? For argument's sake. This is not scientific. You will need to prove it properly, academically, as I say. Hashtag buy the dip. Number three. It will be made, which is the third layer, it will be made of the crypto ecosystem at large, right? The punters, the miners, the coders, the podcasters, the evangelists, the maximalists, the digital influencer, who provide the cognitive support of the Bitcoin global ecosystem. Okay? But also, we should consider altcoins, stablecoins, NFTs, of course, and all other crypto assets that basically act as gateways, right, to pockets of Bitcoin available for exchange, trade, wrapping, saving, also financial alternative finance operation you can actually do, a DeFi operation that you can do nowadays, all right? So that's just the ecosystem at large, the whole crypto. And that you have to include altcoins by definition too. So that could explain what price variation signal going from ranging from 20K to 10K, let's say, all right? So that's the ecosystem at large, okay? And then, of course, the number four, which is the base layer. The layer of the OG layer. The 3rd of January 2009 layer. And if you want to go beyond that, you would say even October 2008, at the time when the actual white paper was written, as per the protocol, of course. That base layer is made of early adopters, social adopters, principled adopters. The so-called Bitcoin core, the core of the community, the heartbeat, the pulse. Okay, the Bitcoin core group. Some of the miners, of course, could be included in this layer too. Obviously, most of the miners are OGs by definition. Most. Remember what I said, most. So those are the Bitcoin maximalists, the hodlers, who hold the coin, the crypto coins, the Bitcoin, for the sake of holding. That's what they call hodlers. They hold so hard that they become holders. And joining an incredible revolution that will empower people around the globe, banking the unbanked, which was the original pillar. Banking the unbanked, which was the original pillar of the Satoshi revolution, as per the protocol, of course. Now, for those, the so-called hodlers, the Bitcoin core group, the social adopters, the principal adopters, for those, the Bitcoin price signal does not matter whatsoever, as long as the Bitcoin project sees the light of day, as per the protocol, like it is now in San Salvador and Central African Republic, Bangui. As per the Bangui mathematician, which is the name of the president of Central African Republic. That's his nickname. He's the Bangui mathematician. I mean, think about a coincidence, right? He's a mathematician. And of course, Bitcoin is all about game theory and math. So he has to be very comfortable dealing with that particular currency or assets. The leader, Central African Republic. Crypto leader, crypto nation, the first two crypto nations, San Salvador and Central African Republic. We have other islands of crypto forces like that. Miami is one. Like the mayor of New York, I think Mr. Adams, who decided to have his entire wage or salary to be paid in crypto or Bitcoin. That's good. That's interesting. We're aware, of course, that a lot of mining is happening now in Texas, in America, right? The greatest location for mining because of cheap energy. Texas. China is still around, of course. Kazakhstan and a few other places, in Canada and Australia. As far as mining is concerned, right? But when we talk about an actual legal tender, which is what we all aspire to, we like to see more and more nations want adopt Bitcoin as legal tender because it's the best hedge against inflation. That's a fact. So if your country is going through inflation, trust me, it's time to transfer some of your assets into crypto. Please, this podcast is not a financial podcast. Of course, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, what not to do with your money. It's just pure observation from a technical and computer science point of view. We're not, of course, financial advisors, and you are supposed to go into your due diligence and talk to a real, proper financial advisor for financial advice. Okay, so but now I've got the right to say whatever I want to say. Anyway, so once I've said that, it's a legal disclaimer. Sorry for that, guys. So we have to understand, Bitcoin as legal tender has been validated by the strongest force in those countries, which are actually often beyond the leaders, because if you think about it, those have been legalized by parliaments, and parliaments always represent the people, which is different from a leader taking an executive order to impose something on its population, and by the time the leader goes, or power, or there is a power reshuffle, whatever you call it, then the executive order disappears with the leader. No, this is different. It's been voted by a parliament, and parliament represents the people. You will need another parliament to actually cancel those decisions, which means you will need a huge amount of the population that has to be against or would have had such a negative experience with the crypto asset that is Bitcoin that they will actually decide to reverse that regulation. So hopefully we've got a good 5-year run there in both countries, all right? Regardless of Bitcoin price. That's a good thing. Because, of course, those nations behave like holders. They will behave like holders. All right, they're not going to sell out their assets the next day because Bitcoin price is going down or up. No, they will behave like holders and keep their money in their coffin. So in that respect, they're gigantic holders. And that's really interesting for us as far as the crypto community is concerned, to have huge hodling base, which means the price will get more and more stable as more and more nations adopt it, by definition. You guys have to understand that. The more nations adopt the crypto assets, the less you're going to have those wild swings in prices. By definition. Although you will never ever get rid of the trading aspects around Bitcoin, by definition. It's a crypto asset. It lends itself to algorithm trading and bots manipulating and so forth. It lends itself to that by definition. Okay, we have to also admit that. But we want the crypto community to be very, very, very wary of what they're doing in and around Bitcoin ecosystem, especially now that we are considering that nation states are involved. So whatever you do against Bitcoin, especially against, it would impact real people on the other side of the world that already have next to nothing in their pockets. So for you to come in and start doing some reckless trading, it's not nice. It just isn't nice to do that today anymore. It doesn't make any sense. You are impacting the life of real people on the ground. Families, children, mother, father. People that rely on that money to pay for the livelihood, the expenses, travel, school, education. Or even if we're just considering that the Bitcoin as legal tender, especially in Central African Republic, it won't be actually available to the men on the street from day one. The way it's been deployed in San Salvador. In San Salvador, they were actually looking to use the Lightning Network to make Bitcoin available to a massive amount of the local population. In Central African Republic, it will remain a crypto assets, but more like a financial assets for outside trades, mostly, right? To buy and sell goods abroad, all right? That's how they really want to use it. That's going to be the model there. That's interesting. Two countries are making Bitcoin as a legal tender, but with different objectives and different use cases. So that's why it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see what's going on in both countries. So we are definitely going to have to put the crypto lens on those places. So that's going to be extremely interesting. And of course, expect this podcast to be all over those issues going forward. Right, so now read cast hashtag readcast. We get to the part where we read the Satoshi white paper as per the protocol, of course. Now, it's Bitcoin peer-to-peer electronic cash system. You can go on bitcoin.com and find, of course, the whole white paper there as per the protocol. Okay? So here we go. Now you remember the foreword. They're now world famous. Abstract. A pure peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payment to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a single financial institution. Digital signature provide part of the solution, but the main benefits are lost if a trusted third party is still required to prevent double spending. We propose a solution to the double spending problem using a peer-to-peer network. The network timestamps transactions by hashing them into an ongoing chain of hash-based proof of work, forming a records that cannot be changed without redoing the proof of work. Okay, that's the secret. Okay, proof of work. You get it? If you don't, you'll always be out of the loop. Now, then we had number one, introduction, of course, and it was looking at commerce. Then number two, it was transaction. If you remember, we're looking at public keys, signatures, of course, private keys also. All right. Then number three, we had a timestamp server. So we understood that inside the hash function, the hashing function, which is a mathematical function, okay, every time a block was created, there would be a time that was attached to that block, because that block will be created at a certain time, and of course that time will be hashed into the block itself. Okay, so there is a timestamp effect there. All right. Then number four, proof of work, of course. Okay, wanted to make sure, Satoshi Nakamoto wanted to make sure that the system was difficult to hack, and by definition he wanted the system to provide some sort of work and energy in order to increase its durability and its resilience, of course, to cyber attack. All right, so proof of work is here extremely important because it actually does protect you against cyber attacks by definition. Okay, then number five, we had the network, and we look at the steps to run the network. Right, new transactions are broadcast to all nodes. Each node collects new transaction into a block. Right, each node then works on finding a difficult proof of work for its block, so it's solving a mathematical problem. All right, and when a node finds a proof of work, it broadcasts the block, of course, to all the nodes who have to then accept it by definition. Okay, and node will accept the block only if all transactions in it are valid and not already spent. Alright? And nodes, of course, will express their acceptance of the block by working on creating the next block in the chain using the hash of the accepted block, the previous block, as the previous hash. Okay? So we got that. Okay? That's number five, that was network. Then, of course, number six, which was incentive. Okay? And we know now, by convention, the first transaction in a block is a special transaction that starts a new coin owned by the creator of the block. Alright, got it? This adds an incentive for nodes to support the network and provides a way to initially distribute coins into circulation, since there is no central authority to issue them. So the bonus is, of course, on the miners, right? Get it? They mine, they get a coin. What they mine is they mine and verify all the transactions in the network. Now, reclaiming disk space. It's interesting. We talked about it last time. The use of the Merkle tree, the root hashes, to create a root hash that will actually compress, right, all the information, okay, all the transaction into smaller file size, right? So once the latest transaction in a coin is buried under enough blocks, the spent transactions before it can be discarded to save disk space. Got it? Spent transaction before it, discarded to save disk space. So to facilitate this without breaking the block's hash, transactions are hashed in a Merkle tree, alright, with only the roots included in the block's hash, alright? So that's kind of the idea of reclaiming this space. It shows also, and that's what we said last time, it kind of highlights the supreme elegance of the protocol, alright? Because it is actually saving and reclaiming this space. So it is actually trying to avoid hurting the environment, right? From the inception, from the code itself. The code itself doesn't allow you to attack the environment. You understand that? That's very powerful. Okay? Because most of the people who criticize the Bitcoin ecosystem do not have that on their softwares. At code level. Very few folks. Alright? Now, number 8, simplified payment verification. That's what we're going to see today. SPV. Number 8, simplified payment verification. We're going to read that today. Right. So, it is possible in simplified payment verification, okay, it is possible to verify payments without running a full network node. Makes sense. A user only needs to keep a copy of the block headers of the longest proof of work chain, which he can get by querying, so grabbing the information, network nodes until he is convinced he has the longest chain and obtain the Merkle branch linking the transaction to the block it's timestamped in. So what does that mean? 1, keep a copy of the block headers of the longest proof of work chain, right? That's the first thing you need to do. How do you get there? You query the nodes until you're convinced you have the longest chain. Then look for the Merkle branch, all right, which links the transaction. Okay, there's been money exchange, okay, or assets exchange, crypto assets exchange, or Bitcoin exchanged, right? And you have, so therefore you have to link the transaction, of course. That's what you're trying to link to the block where the transaction has been timestamped in. All right, so you're looking for, you get it, the Merkle branch, which link the transaction to the block it is time-stamped in. Okay? You cannot check the transaction for yourself, but by linking it to a place in the chain, you can see now that a network node has accepted it, and the blocks added after it further confirm the network has accepted it. Got it? So, let's look at there is a little bit of a drawing there available. Okay? So what do we have there? We have a longest proof of work chain. Okay? You have 3 blocks headers. Kind of all similar. Almost all similar. If it's not for the Merkle root. Yeah, Merkle, like the politician, actually. It's the same spelling. Merkle. So you're going to have your block header. Inside that block, of course, what are you going to have? Well, you're going to have your previous hash. I think we talked about it now. We talked about mathematical hashing function. There is a nonce. We haven't spoken about that. I've already mentioned it, but I know we haven't been into detail into the nonce. Although in season 1 we did, but we will go back. That's the whole point of this podcast as well. We're trying to go through the knowledge, the Satoshi white paper, as per the protocol. But we're going at our own speeds. We really want to make sure that everything we talk about or we tell you, we want to make sure that you understand it. Which is why I've always advised to listen to this podcast 2 or 3 times, not just once. Once doesn't make any sense. You need to listen to this podcast 2 or 3 times to really feel its impact. All right, so there we go. So we have our 3 blocks, okay? So that's still fair, okay? That's still neat. And then now the middle block, right, has now obviously, hash 1 is got a hash 2 tree, which is the merger, of course, of hash 2 and 3. All right. And then, of course, at the bottom, okay, underneath hash 3, you're going to have transaction 3, of course, right? Which is a transaction that creates the hash and then subsequent double hash, right? Because you're going to have hash 2 and 3 are going to be hashed into just one hash, okay? And then you have the next block, which is carbon copy of the previous one. Carbon copy, so excuse the pun not intended. Here we go. All right, so as such, of course, the verification is reliable as long as honest nodes control the network, but is more vulnerable if the network is overpowered by an attacker, by definition. Okay? So while network nodes can verify a transaction for themselves, the simplified method can be fooled by an attacker's fabricated transaction for as long as the attacker can continue to overpower the network. One strategy to protect against this would be to accept alerts from network nodes when they detect an invalid block, prompting the user software to download the full block and alert the transaction to confirm the inconsistency. Businesses that receive frequent payment will probably still want to run their own nodes for more independent security and quicker verification. Alright? So ultimately you're gonna have to run your own nodes if you want to have the most secure blockchain system possible. That's a very good lesson for the day. Okay, as far as the white paper reading is concerned, it's over. Because after that, it's combining and splitting values. So we're going to have to look at that next week. And then we'll look at privacy as well. All right. And calculation. Okay. 9, combining and splitting value. 10, privacy. Number 11, calculations. All right. So that's the progression we're going to have going forwards. Okay. Excuse the pun once again. All right. So thank you again for your attention. This podcast is not over. Keep liking it. Keep sharing it, keep listening to it. We're now going deep into the concept we've mentioned throughout the reading of this white paper as per the protocol, of course. Okay, I'll see you on the other side. Don't. Thank you.
SEARCHCAST.
#SearchCast. Hashtag. So this is an article on... this is an article on Investopedia, right? So we're looking at the word nonce, because I think that was actually one of the words that was quite kind of intriguing when reading the white paper today. This simplified payment verification system is extremely innovative, of course. And the nonce seems to have a big importance in that. And Jake Frankenfield actually agreed with me. It was updated on June the 12th, 2022 on Investopedia, of course. And was fact-checked by Yarilet Perez. So what is a nonce? A nonce means number used only once. Number used only once. Okay? A random number that is generated only once. That number is 32 bits or 4 bytes. Get it? That number is added to a hash or encrypted block in the blockchain that, when rehashed, okay, will meet the difficulty level restriction. So the nonce is a number that blockchain miners are solving for, actually, right? When the solution is found, the blockchain miner that solved it is given the block reward. Okay. So, key takeaways, of course, nonce, number only used once. That's the actual literal definition. Once the miners will solve the hash, the miner gets a block reward. That's how it works. Remember what we said, incentives. Miners open new blocks by generating nonce that makes the hash they create less than the hash from the block they are validating. So when you open a new block, all right, that is generating a nonce, okay, well, the new block has a new nonce, obviously, right? So the hash has to have a value, okay, they create, which is less than the hash from the block they are validating at the moment. So they're validating a block, okay, that's one thing. You just validate, you verify the transaction, that's what it means. And then on the other side, you create a new block, all right? But what is certain is the value of the hash of the block you're validating versus the value of the hash of the block you are creating, okay? The hash you create is less than the hash from the block you are validating, okay? So a blockchain security, of course, rely on its ability to create and validate long encrypted numbers, okay, called hash, right? The cryptographic function used to generate a hash is deterministic, meaning that it will produce the same result each time the same input is used. That's one thing. The second thing is, whatever the size of the input, the number of characters will always be the same. And that's 64 characters. As a coincidence or not, 64 times 4 equals 256. And then you go back to SHA-256, which is the cryptographic function used to hash transaction on the blockchain. Okay? So this complex system, of course, creates the security net of a blockchain. You understand that? That's where the security is coming from. That's where the trust is coming from. That's why Web3 is 10 times better than everything we're doing around Web 2.0 or Web 1.0. All right? So Web 3.0, which is a blockchain-based web, will definitely send Web 1.0 and Web 2.0 into the history footnote and dustbin, if there is such a thing in the digital realm. So transactions on a blockchain are aggregated into blocks from a memory pool based on the age of the transaction or the amount of fees paid. Transactions on a blockchain are aggregated into blocks from a memory pool based on the age of the transaction or the actual amount of fees paid. All right? So, what do we have? We have the header, which is metadata, which contains the blockchain version number, the previous block's hash, the Merkle root, the timestamp, the difficulty target, and the nonce. The nonce is the value that miners are trying to solve for. How is the nonce used? The nonce is used to validate the information contained within a block. The mining program generates random numbers, append it to the hash of the current header, all right, and rehashes the value, okay, and compare this to the target hash. That's how you know if you're getting close to verifying a transaction. If the resulting hash value meets the requirements, the miner has created a solution and is awarded the block. If the value doesn't match the target, nonce is increased by 1 and the process starts again. This continues until one miner meets the target. So most blocks are opened by mining pools because the mining difficulty is so high that a single miner cannot challenge a mining pool anymore. And what is a mining pool is it is an association of several miners, which results sometimes in what is known as Cantillon effect, but I won't go into that today. I will explain the Cantillon effect at a later stage at some point. But just remember that Mining pool are interesting because obviously they have much more CPU powers, because you're putting together a whole group of computers or servers or data centers, right, together. You always have much more CPU power or processing power, if you want, than an isolated or single miner who's mining from home. Because that miner will not have enough hashing power to keep up. Okay. In the number of hashes per second that a miner is capable of. Okay? So a single miner will always struggle compared to the number of hashes per second that a pool can do. Okay, you get it? So because of that, the mining pool will always outpace and win when confronted by the single miner. Okay? So a home computer with the latest equipment might have a hash rate of 100 mega hashes per second, 60 million, where a mining farm full of ASIC miners might hash around 30 exa hashes per second, 18 zeros or quintillion. Okay? So 60 for you on one side, 18 zeros on the other side. You're lightweight. Okay? It is highly unlikely that the nonce will be guessed on the first try. Miners generally have to test a large number of nonce options before getting it right. The greater the difficulty, a measure of how hard it is to create a hash, less than the target. Got it now? The longer it is likely to take to generate a solution. Alright? And of course, block difficulty is kept the same across the entire network, meaning that all miners have the same chance of figuring out the correct hash. Right. Cryptocurrency networks typically establish a target number of blocks they want to be processed during a specific period and occasionally adjust the difficulty to ensure that this target is met. If the number of blocks processed does not meet this target, the difficulty will be reduced. So the system will adapt. You understand that? The system will adapt, okay? And reduces the difficulty, right? With the reduction in difficulty set to how much time the process was over the limits, okay? Alright. So how are nonce used? I think we kind of saw that. In cryptocurrency, nonces are used as a number that is used in a hash to verify the transaction and other data contained in the block, okay? So it's really a tool for verification. You get it? The nonce. Okay. Good. Right. Let's keep reading about that. How long is a Bitcoin nonce? I think we said that again. We said that already. Okay. It's 32 bits or 4 bytes. Okay. Whose value is set to the hash of the block that will contain a run of leading zeros. Alright? So that's what we really want. A run of leading zeros. Now, I was looking at Stack Overflow, and the question over there, they're always more, how can I put it? Much more thorough in their investigation, Stack Overflow, right? You can go on HTTPS, Stack Overflow, Stack STACK over OVER flow FLOW.com, alright? Stack Overflow. And got a lot of questions over there, of course, yeah. And the question was, it was asked 8 years ago, actually. That's why it's interesting. So that question has always been around here, the crypto ecosystem. It's been floating about. The question is there a limit on the message size for SHA-256? Right, when hashing a string, like a password, with SHA-256, for example, is there a limit to the length of the string I am hashing? For example, it is only safe to hash strings that are smaller than 64 characters or something like that. Okay. There is technically a limit, but it's quite large. Okay. And the limit is 2 million terabytes. Not so sure about that, to be honest with you. Yeah, alright, 2 million terabytes, okay. Which means that the limit is almost entirely theoretical, not practical, okay. Most people don't have the storage for nearly that much data anyway, right? And should we say you had an excellent Wi-Fi and all of that, perfect, with the current computers today, just to read the data, it will still take you 220 years just to read the data first, all right? So it doesn't make any sense. It's not practical, all right? 220 years just to read the data. You still haven't done the hash yet, all right? It's a hash, okay? So remember, you can still, compress, you can still hash an entire book, if you think about it, okay? And in reality, if you want to start working with that volume of data, you will need to use another protocol, hash function than SHA-256 to do so, right? Because you will need to be faster and get to where you need to get as fast as possible. So you wouldn't use SHA-256. Bitcoin utilizes SHA-256 because it's probably enough as far as financial transactions are concerned. What does that mean? Say you want to hash files larger than those that you could be able to hash with SHA-256, all right? Then you're better off using SHA-512, which has a higher limit, of course. So now, to finish with this SHA-256 palaver and nonce palaver, right? First, there is a difference between hashing and encryption, okay? Hashing is not encryption, okay? SHA-256 is a hashing function, not an encryption function. Understand that, right? It's a hashing function, not an encryption function. Secondly, SHA-256 is not an encryption function, so therefore it cannot be decrypted. It's irreversible. It goes one way. That's it. All right. SHA-256 cannot be reversed because it's a one-way function. So from time to time, you'll be able to find on the dark web some database that already have solved a potential combination that your cryptographic function has already solved, if you want, right? And there is a database somewhere on the dark web that can do that comparison. But obviously, now with the nonce systems, you know that for sure you will always generate a new hash that is different from the previous one, and the value of that hash will always be smaller than the previous hash as well. So you will always struggle to find the matching, because the nonce will generate a random number, so it will always generate a brand new shiny hash. So there is no database for that hash, for that particular hash that already exists. So it doesn't work. The dark web can't actually solve that problem for you. Got it? All right. So thirdly, SHA-256 verification works by computing it again and comparing the result with the result at hand. So what it does is it doesn't actually do anything special, but actually comparing the result it has versus the expected result. And if those two match, fine. Then the verification is successful. Because theoretically, it is extremely difficult to find another input which gives the same hash result. Extremely difficult. All right, we've seen already in terms of calculation the time it would take to your machine to actually do that. It's something akin to the age of the universe. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The amount of time it would take a computer. I mean, current computers. Now, I've heard a lot of you talk about quantum computing. I've heard a chatter online about quantum computing. But that's going to take a little bit of time before we get to actual computers that can actually deliver that. Second, the threats, trust me, wouldn't be just the Bitcoin network. All right, it would be the entire security system of the planet, all the banks, governments, So I think people will be busy first targeting that before actually spending time doing that, spending time on the Bitcoin network. All right, so the entire planet will be at risk there. Okay, and every single economy and countries around the world will be at risk. So it will be very difficult. Okay, it will be extremely difficult for anybody to actually do it, put it together, and also we're talking about somebody who has the hashing power, and almost, should I say, what we today? Sorry, I would say that hashing power. I like to say anyway, but it's up for discussion. But I like to see the network that has a bigger hashing power than the Bitcoin network. I like to see if that network actually does exist, that has a better hashing power. That would be something to investigate. Please get back to me in the comments section. I'm willing to look at that. But the hashing power of the Bitcoin network is, for me, unmatched in the world, right? Because of the people that are behind the Bitcoin concept. Now, I'm open for discussion, of course. I'm open to discuss all of that at some point. But from my understanding, it is definitely by far the most secure global network in the world, and the global network with the highest hashing power. Again, looking at how we are going to apply the nonce and the hash into the Bitcoin ecosystem. Now, the nonce in a Bitcoin block, we've said it's 32 bits or 4 bytes, okay? Field whose value is set so that the hash of the block has to contain a good run of leading zeros. You want zeros at the front of the field, sorry. So the rest of the fields may not be changed as they have a defined meaning by definition, right? Any change to the block data, such as nonce, will make hash completely different, right? As soon as you change the block data or the nonce, the hash is different, okay? And since it is believed infeasible to predict which combinations of bits will result in the right hash, many different nonce values are tried, okay? And the hash is recomputed for each value until a hash containing the required number of 0 bits is found. And then you match it, and then that's how you verify a transaction. Get it? The number of 0 bits required is set by the difficulty. The resulting hash has to be a value less than the current difficulty, and so we'll have to have a certain number of leading 0 bits to be less than that. Right? Get it? As this iterative calculation requires times and resources, the presentation of the block with the correct nonce value. So the presentation of the block with the correct nonce value constitutes proof of work. Got it? So let's look at that closer, just really closer. Nonce are used in proof of work systems, okay, to change the input of a cryptographic hash function. So it has to obtain a hash for a certain input that fulfills the condition we set at the beginning. All right? In doing so, it becomes far more difficult to create a desirable hash than to verify it. Right? So for Bitcoin, nonce, proof of work using hash function, right? As a mean to combat email spamming. So there you go. We're going back to emailing. Right? And it was forcing email senders to find a hash value for the email, right? Which included a timestamp to prevent pre-computation of useful hashes for later use, right? That had an arbitrary number of leading zeros by hashing the same input with a large number of nonce value until a desirable hash was obtained. All right, so email also used that, okay? In order to prevent multiple sending of emails, right? So on the other side, of course, the person who has to receive your email obviously has to match the hash on your side, and then those two now will be compared, and now you can open the email, okay? That's exactly what's happening. It's obviously faster. Similarly, the Bitcoin blockchain hashing algorithm can be tuned to an arbitrary difficulty by changing the required minimum maximum value of the hash so that the number of Bitcoin awarded for new blocks does not increase linearly with increased network computation power as new users join. That's very clever. You don't want the number of Bitcoin to increase that have been given out to miners to increase, especially as you have more and more players joining the system. Okay, that's the beauty of the protocol. This is likewise achieved by forcing Bitcoin miners to add nonce value to the value being hashed, okay, to change the hash algorithm output. So the nonce also is a tool that helps us regulate the network, really. Regulate the difficulty to hash, of course. And based on the usage, alright? So the game theory is always at play there. And based on the number of people actually using the network. Because cryptographic hash algorithm cannot easily be predicted, if you look at the input, obviously, this makes the act or the actions of blockchain hashing, alright, or computing, and the possibility of being awarded Bitcoin something of a lottery. Right? So there's competition, a healthy competition, right? Where the first miner to find a nonce that deliver a desirable hash is awarded actually valuable Bitcoin. And there is that notion, of course, of the golden nonce. Alright? And that's a nonce which results in a hash value lower than the target difficulty. So this is, in practical mining application, you would say that it has a tendency to be simplified to any nonce which has 32 leading zeros. Right? And a secondary test checking if the actual value is lower than the target. Okay? So you get the idea, okay? So we create these random numbers, we put that in front of our block, in front of our hash, we rehash that hash, and we get a new hash, which will be the lead for the next block to come. All right, got it? So hence the importance of the nonce. It kind of add another layer of security. By definition, it's a random number, and of course, it also controls the supply of coins within the system. So it has the nonce is very important, and it's very useful to the blockchain ecosystem, right? Okay, so that was the nonce for today, guys, and that was pretty comprehensive approach to what is the nonce, right? When we're talking about the block of a blockchain. Keep listening to this podcast. Keep sharing this podcast. We need your feedback. Let's carry on. SocialCast. Hashtag SocialCast. Hashtag SocialCast. SocialCast. Hashtag SocialCast. And if you remember last week, we started talking about it, right? We started talking about how do you build an action-led online social media community. A community that would actually respond to a call to action. As opposed to a lolcat or a cute dog that can have millions of followers. But the difference between a dog, a charismatic dog, and you with your 30 followers on Facebook or Instagram is that you can actually give people, human beings, a call to action. Meaning you can give orders, you can give direction, okay, to the people you're talking to, and they're going to act upon your order, okay, in order to satisfy or solve the problem you're trying to solve, or to satisfy your needs or wants. A lolcat cannot do that. A lolcat can definitely not, as far as I know, as far as we know, actually give a call to action. Might do it subliminally to other cats, I guess, probably, or to human beings. But usually beyond the, oh, it's cute. Yes, you're going to do a hashtag search. That's one way of looking at it, of course. Looking at the hits. You do Google search, of course. And also you're going to do as many surveys as you can, for sure. But you can't decide, you preemptively, that you're not going to run this on the platform. You don't decide. Okay? It is your community that basically decide where you are going to be. And ultimately, it's usually when you actually build a profile that you can actually see how many people actually are into what you're trying to say, or what you're trying to sell, or what you're trying to do, or your needs and wants, and so on and so forth. Alright? So you will need, for sure, to at some point do a profile on every single platform. Mainstream platform, mainstream social media platform actually exists. For us, the mainstream is social media. The mainstream is not TV, radio, or press. The mainstream is social media for us, social media practitioners. Okay. So the mainstream being today, as of today, definitely Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. All right. So paid media. Paid media is a very interesting one, of course. Paid media has to do with paid content by definition. All right. So it's the content that you pay to actually get to play, and that content is usually based around advertising, promotion, events. Why not? All right. Usually, you will need to have a very good creative team to build an advert, whether it's a slide, whether it's a flyer, whether it's one of those cards on YouTube that you put at the end of your video or at the beginning of your video, right? That, my friend, is on you. It's a cost on you. Then you will need to hire specialists who can do Facebook ads and Twitter ads and YouTube ads or LinkedIn ads. Ad stands for advertising, of course. Those advertising platforms are very specific, require professionals. They're easy to grasp, even if you're not computer literate or a geek or whatever you call it. But actually, if you don't know them, it's a trap. It's a money trap. It's a honey trap, right? You're going to spend a lot of money before understanding how the platform works. Okay, so that's why you need a professional. Because if you don't have a professional, you're going to spend out of your $1,000, €1,000, or that you want to spend, you will lose at least 200 to 300 just because you don't know the platform. And that's the cost of not knowing the platform. And that's the cost of hiring a professional. That's the key difference. Okay, out of $1,000 or €100 or $100, you will lose 20, 30, 40 euros or dollars just to understand the platform. Okay, so 40% of whatever you're going to do will go to the platform. It will go to Facebook Vault or Coffer, or Twitter Vault or Coffer, or LinkedIn Vault or Coffer, or YouTube Vault or Coffer. Okay, so please bear that in mind. You need a professional. So that professional doesn't come cheap, of course. It will cost you money. So paid media is very expensive. You can't do that all the time. Obviously, it has to be campaign-based, campaign managed. What I mean by that is you're going to have to decide on the start date, and you're going to have to decide on the end date and actually stick to it, because as I said, it's expensive. So the money will be flowing, so therefore you'll be really watching that money for sure. And so, which is why you want to have a campaign, and also look at, how much money you're actually spending per day, per prospect, all right, or per followers, or per fans, of course. All of this has to be correlated. Okay, you can't have all those numbers floating out without being correlated. Okay, if I'm spending €1 or $1 or one. Dinar, okay, I've got to make sure that it fits. It is correlated to a certain amount of people that are either commenting to my content, or joining my group, or following me, or liking me, and so on and so forth. Okay, all of this has to be correlated. The virtual has to be correlated to the physical, always. All right, the virtual alone. Let's say you have You're doing a campaign for a shop that is opening, or an event, right? You have a big event. Let's say you have 10,000 likes, but on the other side, inside the shop, you have 2 prospects or 2 potential clients or customers. 2, just 2 out of 10,000 likes. What are you going to say to yourself? I'm a very good social media manager. I got 10,000 likes and followers or subscribers or comments. But then inside the shop, your clients will say, well, this guy, this person, this lady is not a good social media manager. I don't have anybody inside my shop or inside my events. And I've rented the space for, 1,000 euros, and the room is empty. Okay? So no, you're not a good social media manager for your client. He doesn't like you. Your client doesn't like you. Alright? And that's not a surprise. It's because you have a strong virtual or digital bias, and you're just trying to enforce your bias onto your client. The client complains, says, I had only 2 visitors, or I had only 2 clients. And you say, but I had 10,000 likes, it's your fault. No. That's not how it works, is it? That's not how it works. It's not the client's fault. It's never the client's fault. And anyway, if you think that way, the client will drop you. End of story. So, reverse example, let's say you have 500 people inside the shop, or 500 people attending the event, but you only have 2 likes. So how do you look at it? Well, I'm a bad social media manager, or I'm a bad community manager. But then the client says, oh, well, you're doing still a job. I still have people, they're inside my shop. And it's probably not down to you, right? It's probably down to its own contact, your client's own contact, or the word of mouth, or the street marketing team that it actually is still a job to, run the people and bring them inside the shop. It is not down to you. That means you have to review your copy. So one way or another, it's not good news for you, right? Whether you have 500 people inside the shop and 2 likes, or whether you have 10,000 likes and 2 people inside the shop, those 2 results are not good to you, nor to your client, by the way. Because think about it. Even the client is happy, he's got 500 people inside the shop and they're buying and everything. Okay, cool. So basically the client can now afford to pay you, right? Because he had 500 clients or 500 punters. However, if the client is a bit forensic in his approach and actually goes on his own Facebook page and sees that as a client, I only have 2 likes. Okay, I got 500 people inside the shop, but I only got 2 likes on my Facebook page, or my Twitter feed, or YouTube channel. And therefore, sir, you're still doing a bad job because you only have 2 likes. So what's wrong with you? I'm paying you this amount of money and that's all I get for my money. So you see, the client is not going to be happy and will probably not pay you, especially if you're freelance or working for an agency. So in that case, the situation is very, very simple. You have to correlate it, all data, all specific data in the digital world to numbers in the physical world. Now you might say, yeah, but the thing is, I'm not opening a shop. I just want people to download my newsletter or my PDF file, or I just want people to visit my website, or I just want people. Well, okay, fine. In that case, all of this is still physical action. Think about it, right? What we mean by physical action is at some point there is some sort of physical reality that manifests itself, right? That physical reality, a download is physical, right? Because you're using machines, you're using energy, it is physical. And you can count it, by the way. You can count, 500 downloads, 200 downloads. And then behind those downloads, you will have profiles and names. So you're getting names as well. So you're building a database. A database is a very physical thing, if you think about it. Once you have your sales teams to actually have a look at it and test it, they will tell you if it's physical or not, right? So it's a step towards physicality. So in that respect, we still consider that as physical, right? That's very important to understand that. All virtual data have to be correlated at some point to some physical event or physical manifestation. The physical manifestation could be downloading, people attending an event or a shop. That's obvious, right? Or people subscribing to your newsletter. That's obvious. But also people downloading a file, that's also obvious because it's very physical, because there is a name behind that file that is being downloaded, there is an IP address behind that file, it's a geographical location behind that file. So it's very physical. Okay? And then you have to do the follow-up, obviously, right? Which will confirm or not the physical impression you had. Okay? Right, but that's because from day one, as far as your strategy was concerned, especially when we're going to go into the analytics, it's not now, but we're going to talk about the analytics in further episodes. That is your first mission. Correlate the virtual world with the physical world, always. All right. Be realistic. Be real. And the more real you are, the more your clients will appreciate you, or the person who's giving you the order. Okay. So please bear that in mind. All right. So that's paid media. Okay. Paid media is extremely important. It takes a lot of resource. It's not as time consuming as own content for sure, but it's still very expensive to do. Right, so at some point, okay, when do we get away from actually spending that much money? It's coming, right? Shared media, there you go, shared media, perfect, all right? For now, okay, you're not spending anything, okay? You're sleeping at home, and people are sharing your content, right? Fantastic. And you're sharing someone else's content too, by the way, all right? So you share people's content on your feed, okay? And you are also being shared by people. But first of all, let's look at why do you share? It's important to share. It's very important to share. First, it makes your channel more interesting to come and watch. If you keep just posting dreadful PR content, no selfies, just portraits, you are just annoying people. You're not interesting. You're not entertaining when you do that. All right? So you don't want to be PR. This is away from PR. PR being public relation or press relation. This is away from PR. You can still have your PR statement. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Although Twitter is probably more suited for that. Or LinkedIn. But what you want mostly is content that is interesting as well. Right, on top of that PR content. So how do you do that? If you have 10 posts, right, that you're going to post between Monday and Wednesday, let's say. That's 3 posts a day. For me, that's the minimum. That's the minimum, all right? You have to post a minimum of 3 posts a day. But if you have 3 platforms, then it could be, it depends, all right? So that's how you have to look at it. But anyway. You have to post on a regular basis, all right? And if you have to program 10 posts, 3 posts should be actually, PR content. It's about you. It's about your PR statement. This is what we do. This is what we did. Okay, good. That's 3 posts out of 10. All right? The second bunch of 3 posts should be what we call community news, right? No, sorry. It should be, okay. The first 3 posts should be about you. The second set of 3 posts should be about your values. Okay, why do we do what we do? What are our values? And let me remind you what our values are. So keep reposting and posting about your value. You're not talking about you per se, but you're talking about the value. Those values will be recognized by the future member of your community, because they will adhere to the same idea, the same ideals, the same concept, the same vision. All right. So that's why values are very important. Okay. So 3 posts about you, your activity, your organization, what you do, who you are, and so on and so forth. Fine. 3 out of 10. Then another set of 3 that will be about your values and what is driving your action, from the mindset perspective. Okay? So we're not really talking about you, just talking about your value. Alright? And then the other set of 3 posts should be about more like community news. You're talking about community. That means you could post that have been written by members of the community. All right, that's very important for your community members to see themselves in your feed, because then you give them a real incentive to come and visit your feed, because they will say, oh, from time to time, these people, this profile tends to share content from its followers. And that's interesting to me. All right. So maybe I'm going to post something that I want you to retweet or reshare at some point. Right. That's an incentive for the people following you to actually keep posting and keep getting active and engaged with your profile. That's 333. That's 9. All right. And the last one, the 10th post should be about what is known in the trade as what the fuck? No, what the fudge? Sorry, I shouldn't say that. My bad. Okay, I'm not supposed to use expletive. All right. So, what do we mean by that? Oh, it's a lolcat. It's the guy who's doing a backflip on Times Square, or and he's doing somebody's doing something amazing on social media. It's just amazing social media content. It's a challenge. It's one of those challenges. It's Gangnam Style. It's whatever, right? It's the lolcat, the cute dog, the nice horse, or the great lion. Whatever rocks people's boat on that Friday afternoon, or Thursday afternoon, or Wednesday afternoon, whatever, right? That is distracting. Okay? It's a GIF. It's a meme. You have to play on the meme culture. All right? People on the internet love that. Okay? People on Twitter love the memes. They love the memes. They love the GIFs. So you gotta play that game too. But that's just one post every 10, okay? You want to be taken seriously, so which is why you don't flood your profile or your newsfeed with that sort of content. But once in a while, 6 o'clock in the evening, or 6 p.m. or lunchtime, you put a little thing and you put a little joke or a lolcat, why not, okay? So be very, 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 very flexible on that. So that's why, remember, we didn't go away from shared content, right? I was just trying to explain you why it is important to share someone else's content. And don't forget, I'm also suggesting you share the content from your competition as well. Your competition might be doing better content than you do. Think about it. Your competition might be doing better content than you do, and you better share it, all right? Because if it's good, you share it. You know why? Because I've just told you, we're competing with Netflix, we're competing with YouTube, we're competing with Twitter. We're competing with some of the best platforms of all time. As I say to you, people on Netflix, some people on Netflix have spent 10 years writing and developing a project. You understand? So, people have choice. Your fan base, your subscriber base have choice. You understand that? They have choice. Okay? If they just move their thumb on their smartphone, they get straight onto Netflix and then they leave you forever, because they won't come back. Once they got into Netflix, they're not coming back to you for sure. All right. So, which is why you want to keep people in. And if you find content that is interesting, compelling enough, all right. Yeah, we got interrupted here. Okay, so going back. All right. So, which is why it is important to understand that you have to share someone else's content, your community's content, and also your your competitors' content, in the name of interest and in the name of making sure that people stay glued to your newsfeed, into your content, and that they don't go away from your content. You want them to stay on your channel. You want them to stay on your profile. What you're trying to do is to build an online community. And in order to build an online community, you have to create that community feel and feeling, which means you are sharing the content from anybody inside that community that is worth, of course, watching. If it's not worth it, don't share it, of course. It has to be better than what you do. If it's not better than what you do, then what's the point of it? We understand that, especially with competitors, right? They better be work better than you. Otherwise, why would you share it? It has to be interesting, okay? And that's why community news also, focusing on community news is also very important, all right? So shared content, you got it, okay? So first was own media, own content. Second was paid media, paid content. And third one is shared media, shared content. All right, and the last one is earned media. That's perfect. Sleeping at home and people are sharing your content. All right, they're retweeting you. They're remixing your content. They're resharing you, retweeting you. All right, slicing and dicing your content in every single shape or form, positively, negatively. To some extent, it doesn't matter. Well, we don't want too much of negativity, of course, but to some extent, it doesn't matter. You want your content to be shared. You want people to react to your content. You want people to be impacted by your content to the point where they share it. All right? Or remix it. Or reappropriate it. It's just perfect. It's called earned media, earned content. All right? That comes also from the partnerships that you are going to build with your future partners. Because you have to build partnerships online. A lot of partnerships. As many as possible. There is no limit to that. Give yourself a number. Once a month. One partnership per month. It's a good number. Or two partnerships per month, right? Or one partnership a week. There's 52 weeks, 52 partners. If you can do that, please, by any means necessary, get there. All right? Get there, please. Okay? So earned media is extremely important, and you have to make sure that it is actually happening. All right, this is the best of what. This is where we earn our salt. All right, this is where we get the respect from our clients. It's our ability to generate earned media. All right, and ultimately to generate user-generated content, because ultimately you want to write and create less and less content over the years, and let your community do the content making via user-generated content. Okay? And that's something great because we see that also in basketball nowadays. For those of you who follow NBA basketball, and there are players, former players like JJ Redick and the JJ Redick podcast. They call it athlete-generated content, AGC, athletes, yeah. Or Draymond Green from the Golden State Warriors, who's an expert also at athlete-generated content or athlete-driven content. And it's content that is generated by the athletes, the people that actually, the actors, the protagonists, right? The players themselves are generating content, which is a great innovation in the space, especially when you know that Draymond Green podcast is actually an NBA champion now. So this is the first podcast that is actually an NBA champion of all time, by the way, right? This is the first time. This is the first time ever. So this is quite amazing. Right. Just to finish about the 10, when we said about the 10 post, right? The rule I gave you was the Guy Kawasaki rule, of course. Guy Kawasaki, the great grandmaster of social media, early days social media, 2004, 2005, 2006. Okay, he was definitely the leading light in that respect. Since then, he's got a bit old, but it's still a very important actor and player in the field. Okay, we can't deny that. All right, so now, of course, make sure once you have content, of course, you need to establish an impact report. Impact reports, of course, meaning we need analytics. Google Analytics, Facebook Analytics, YouTube Analytics. We want analytics, okay, as much as possible, right? Analytics are extremely important. Statistics are very important. It's the beginning. It's the how can I say? It's the building block towards one day getting to artificial intelligence, statistics and analytics. So we need those things early on, all right? And to be well organized early on. I repeat again, it is the building block to get towards artificial intelligence. You need to establish a schedule of your publication, of course. We suggest you plan your publication of 52 weeks. We suggest you use, there is 52 weeks in a year, of course. We suggest we use tools like Hootsuite, Buffer, plenty of tools. We're going to put them in the show description as well. Don't you worry about it. Convo site, of course, that we do use for Facebook groups. It's a super, super duper tool for that. Really boost our game on Facebook group. All right. And what did I say? I said, so what about the tools, right? We were looking at the tools, weren't we? Right, so you have Buffer, Postcron as well, Hootsuite, okay? So those are the kind of social media manager multi-posting tools, all right? So that enables us to post one post, to write one post, but to post it on several platforms all at the same time, right? So you write one post and you can post on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Now, I know what you're going to say. Well, yeah, but you don't write for YouTube the way you write for Facebook. I agree with you, all right? But at least you have the tools to do that. Now, how you use the tool, that's another issue, and it will be another podcast, of course, all right? So that was that for content. Next time, we're going to look at content curation as well, which is as important as content making. But that was definitely a pleasure talking to you about that, because it actually, the more you talk about it, the more you see options. I mean, I'm sure when I talk, I have a lot of, it's not hesitation, but it's not, or hezes, as we say in basketball. It's a fact of the matter of the, you have so many ideas coming through your head, and it gives you a lot of inspiration, and then you have so many use cases coming through your head, and you're like, oh yeah, what about that use case, that use case, that use case? So it's quite difficult to explain your experience to somebody on social media. This is going to be probably one of the most, as a course or as a program, I think podcasting or even video actually befits that better than anything in writing, because so much of it is based on practical experience. And practical experience that might be true 6 months ago, but 6 months later will not be true because of the algorithm change on all the platforms that are happening on all platforms, okay? So because of those algorithm change, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or even Google, which is the master platform, if you want to, as far as those changes are concerned, and then those rules won't be true in 6 months' time, and then you'll have to refresh them. So, which is why it is kind of difficult to talk about it in a kind of serene and calm way, but it's definitely a very exciting time. It's definitely a very challenging time as well, if you think about it, because the field is so wide and specialists are so few, and there are a lot of bullshitters, to be honest with you, who kind of blag their way through jobs because the people in front of them have little or no knowledge of what they can do on social media. The proof of the pudding is it's 18, 19, 20, 22, 24 years old that have been able to build online communities and actually make money out of it. Big business can't do that, right? And if you go beyond that, it's geeky community that have been able to set up a system, online system, decentralized online system like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on and so forth. So it's really an interesting time when the knowledge is not in the people that have the most money and the most means and powers. It's like the knowledge is actually to the people who actually have the least of means and the least of power. And that's a very challenging time and very interesting time. And as an educator, of course, we want to educate everybody. We talk to everybody. That's the good thing about us. We talk to absolutely everybody. From the men and women in the streets to the men and women in corporations or middle management or small businesses, startups, which is our kind of bedrock. This is where we come from, the startup world, the startup ecosystem, the startup economy. All right. So again, keep sharing this content, keep liking this content, keep commenting this content, and we're going to start winding down this work soon. Okay.
Go, a podcast produced by ADMP Podcasting Network, hosted by Powermaker, Herman Joyce, founder of ADMP Virtual Incubator for startup and blockchain technology. Hashtag ADMP. You can check us on admpawards.biz. That's our website, admpawards.biz, of course. Don't forget our sister podcast, the Block Down blockchain podcast, #BDB, where you have your favorite bilingual codemaker Herman Jimisi and Dr. Wonkin interviewing crypto actors, of course. You can find us on Podcast Addicts, Podchaser, on Deezer, of course, on YouTube, and on Facebook. We have a group which is facebook.com/groups/Panda Media MP. I'm going to spell it PANMEDIASNP. Don't forget, of course, our newsletter, admpincubator.substack.com, and we have also a Discord, #MelBaron, okay, and you can get us on discord.gg/C6H9JGHQ. You can find us on Telegram, right, tchannels.me/ADMP Awards. Well, alright, sorry for that. And of course on Medium @ADMP Awards, and we have an email address which is teamadmp@gmail.com or newsletter@admp@gmail.com. Stay resilient, have a nice day, have a nice week, and have a nice year. Satoshi's Corner, mic drop.
My name is Herman Jimisi.
Because cryptocurrency was designed by Satoshi.
My name is Herman Jimisi, social media, blockchain, and big data consultant.
The political logic is to bring the power back to the people who use currency as a means of payment.
This podcast is a bite-sized summary of a potential conversation
To communicate to each other, and there's no doubt in my mind.
Physical assets will also be recorded on the blockchain as tokens as well. So,
of a potential conversation with Satoshi Nakamoto, seminal white paper, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. The goal of this podcast is to establish the many sources and resources.
The tokenization of culture is exactly right. It's the only thing I've been thinking about the whole time, and it's going to be a big fucking deal.
The goal of this podcast is to establish the many sources and resources